conservative American predictions. Tonight I'm going to be breaking down a pretty interesting poll that came out of the state of Nebraska today and what this could mean for the 2024 presidential elections as well as the Senate elections and just in general for kind of the next couple of years within the American political system. Now, a few things I do want to say before I get into the video. Number one, if you live in North Florida or just Georgia or most of the South right now, I hope you stay safe during the hurricane. I hope it goes well. If you're watching this video after, the first few days that it's released, this probably won't make too much sense, but there is a pretty bad hurricane right now developing in the South. So, thoughts and prayers going out to everyone who might be affected. Hope everyone stays safe and just stay smart and stuff. Number two, make sure to subscribe and like the video if you did enjoy and stick around for more content like this. So the map I have filled out right now are the states that I believe are pretty reliably going to go for either, party. Now, Florida and Texas as well are two states that I think will go for the Republicans pretty easily, but I do want to talk about them real quick because these are two important states for Republicans to regain control of the Senate, and they are two states they need to hold. So they are states that I do think that they will hold, and I'm not necessarily filling this in by margin, but these are two states that Republicans need to hold and probably will hold. The Republican in Texas being Ted Cruz, the Republican in Florida being Rick Scott, they'll pretty easily hold on, I think. They might face a bit of challenge. They are actually being fought against pretty harsh by the Democrats. They are pouring a lot of money and resources into these two states, especially now as they're seeing Montana being more and more unwinnable, which I'm about to get to. So pretty easy wins for the Republicans here. Now, there are two more states for the Democrats that I think are going to have pretty reliable wins for them. And I do think they will be lean margins, but they're going to be pretty easy for the Democrats to win. Those are Michigan and Wisconsin. So in Michigan, you're going to see Slotkin win pretty easily. And in Wisconsin, you're going to see Tammy Baldwin win re-election by a decent margin. And they're going to be pretty easily won by the Democrats, I think. Down ballot, the Democrats are going to do better in the Rust Belt than they will at the top of the ticket. So, decent wins for the Democrats here, but this puts the Democrats at 48 seats, Republicans at 49. So I do have Kamala Harris winning the presidency as of now. So Democrats need to win 2 of the remaining seats to hold control of the Senate, and Republicans need to win 2 of them to flip it. So, any one of these states, there's a very almost guaranteed chance that Republicans will win at least one of these states, very, very high. Now, there's a decent chance they win 2 of these, and there's a decent chance that they win all 3. So I'm going to just kind of break down mostly Nebraska right now, but I'm also going to fill in the remaining 2 states. So as of now, I do still have Ohio going for the Democrat Sherrod Brown. I do think it's going to be very narrow. We have seen a lot of polls coming out recently in the favor of Bernie Moreno finally. So that is good news for his campaign, but I'm still going to say that Brown narrowly beats him. But in Montana, I do believe the seat is going to flip to the Republicans. Tim Sheehy is polling very well there. He's running a very strong campaign against John Tester, and I do believe Tester will lose this year. So that is a flip to the Republicans along with West Virginia so far. But that only puts Republicans at 50 seats. So they still have quite a bit of ground to gain. So Democrats have lost 2 seats already. So this is not a, terrific night for them. But there is still a chance they can hold the Senate if they flip Nebraska. Now, if they lose Nebraska, then the Senate composition just basically flips from where it is now, 51-49, counting independents, and it becomes 51-49 for the Republicans. So Nebraska could be pretty important this year. Now, I'm not one of those people who actually think it will flip on the Senate level. You have to be realistic. I mean, I personally support Dan Osborne. I know some conservatives might not agree with that, but I do personally support Dan Osborne. But in a state like Nebraska, where Trump's going to win it by a large margin, and he's pretty actively supporting Deb Fischer, it's going to be hard for Osborne to unseat her, but I think he will do pretty good. This is a seat where Fischer won by 19.1%, which is very similar to the presidential margin that Trump won the state by in 2020. And if you want my prediction on this race, as of now, it's probably going to be about Republican or Fischer win by about 10 points. Now, there is a chance it is closer, and what I'm about to break down is this Senate poll out of Nebraska. Now, also, one more thing I do want to point out before I really talk about this. So, technically, Osborne is an independent. However, he will he has stated he will not caucus with either party. He did so originally. He got the Democrats to not run a candidate, as he said he would, like, caucus with them or run on the ballot, as you have his name tied close to the Democrats. Well, he rejected that like the day after the Democratic primary, so they couldn't get anyone on, which I thought was very interesting. And this could potentially turn some Democrats off, but in the race. But let's say he would win, he would basically be that saving vote for the Democrats if he would win, because he probably would have a more Democratic voting record than he would with Republicans. He would on immigration probably side mostly with Democrats. However, he would side with conservatives on some issues. On domestic policy, when it comes to gun rights and stuff, he would probably side more with Republicans, as he is a fairly libertarian person. Social issues, he would definitely side with Democrats more on issues like abortion and other, hot button social topics. But then also I think he would be more moderate than other Democrats or independents in the Senate. I think he would be to the right in his voting record of Sinema, and probably to the left of Manchin. Now, they won't be in the Senate if he would win, if he would win, as they would be out. But, he would have a pretty interesting voting record. On economics, he's a populist, which is, kind of different than the libertarian ideology. But on other issues, he's more or less a libertarian. So, some places where that would, help in a state like Nebraska, that his populist rhetoric, his more or less libertarian rhetoric, that'll help in a state like Nebraska. But again, it's Nebraska, a pretty deep red state. I don't see him having a huge pathway to victory. But surprisingly, there have been some, pretty interesting polls coming out. So in the one Senate race this year between Ricketts and Love, we have Ricketts up by 18 points, which is expected. That is a seat where Ricketts will win pretty easily. I'm not really, that's not surprising at all. And we've seen polls go back and forth with, Fisher and Osborne. We've seen a couple of tied. We've seen a couple of Fisher +2s, +1s. We've even seen a Fisher +26, but keep in mind that was done by Deb Fisher. Now, I do want to point out that almost every poll done this year has been sponsored by either one of the major candidates, except for a split ticket one that showed, or a Survey USA that was sponsored by Split Ticket, and it showed Fisher up by 1. That was the only one done by, a non-candidate backed poll. Now, their Survey USA today, they did another poll, and this time they were sponsored by Dan Osborne, and they do now show Osborne up by 1 point. If he would win by 1 point, this would be very, very interesting. That could potentially shake the entire, political sphere of the United States. I mean, that would just be very interesting. I think it would open the doors to more independents potentially winning races, but I still think it's very unlikely. Now, in the event that he would win, once again, that wouldn't really give Democrats a majority in the sense that, they would be able to pass anything they wanted, and they wouldn't have like an absolute majority, but they would have 49 seats, Republicans would have 50, and there would be one independent who would, I think, more closely align with the Democrats. Now, if they wanted to have a more solid majority, Democrats would need to hold Montana, and they would need to flip Nebraska, flip it, with Osborne winning, and that would give them 50 guaranteed seats, and Osborne would be kind of a 51st every now and then. Now, you also have other Democratic-aligned independents in the Senate, like Bernie Sanders and Angus King, but they are very left-leaning senators, more so Sanders than King, but both are pretty liberal. Osborne does not fall into the same category of ideology as those two do, so it would be a bit of a different scenario. But in the end, I still do see Osborne losing. I think it'll be closer than some people are saying, but it's not going to flip as of now. He's running a good campaign. He's a solid candidate for Nebraska for, an independent/Democrat, but in the end, you have to keep in mind this is Nebraska. He's probably not going to win. Now, a lot could change in the coming months, but, I do have this race holding for the Republicans. I do have Montana flipping, so that's 51 seats on the Senate level. Now, on the presidential level, you have Nebraska's second potentially being one of the deciding factors. Now, as you might know, I do have Harris fairly easily winning the 2nd district, but what if there's a bit of a miscalculation in this district? What if it ends up going to Republican? There are a couple of scenarios where this could matter a whole lot. The first one being is if Harris wins Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If Trump would win Nebraska's 2nd, this would prevent an electoral college victory from Kamala Harris. This would make the race a 269-269 tie if Trump would win the remaining battleground states, which he definitely could. If Harris would win Nebraska's 2nd, though, this would give her the 270 needed to win. And there's a couple more of these where Nebraska's second does come into play, and it's not everyone that you see it happening, but it is enough to where, Democrats want to definitely lock down Nebraska's second, because if they mess something up, it could cost them the race. Once again, here's another 269 scenario where, in this case, if Trump wins the remaining states, let's say he wins Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. This is a bit of a cursed map. I don't see this happening. Let's say he wins those. That puts him at 269. If he wins Nebraska's second, that puts him at 270. But if Harris wins Nebraska's second, that puts her at 269, which, again, gives another tie. As of now, I do have Democrats winning the 2nd district. I think it will be a pretty easy win, and that also shows from some of the recent polling we have. Let me switch over to the presidential polls that we have recently gotten out of Nebraska. There was one that came out today, and Dan Osborne once again sponsored it. So in the general election, Trump is up by 16 points, and I don't believe they have updated the 2nd district. I don't know if they have a separate tab for the 2nd district and stuff, but I believe the poll out of the 2nd district had Harris up by double digits as well. They had Trump up by double digits in the 1st district, and again, he's winning by a decent margin on the at-large vote. So if Harris would win the 2nd district, according to the poll that came out today, sponsored by Osborne, which again I expect she will, that's going to give her that one electoral vote advantage, which could end up giving her the presidency. So, I do expect her to win all of these states right now. I do expect her winning Pennsylvania, Michigan. I do have her winning Arizona and Nevada. I do have her narrowly winning Georgia, and then I have Trump narrowly winning probably North Carolina, and Wisconsin could go either way. I guess we'll give it to Harris as of now. But again, if Trump just flips a couple of these states, if he changes the results just a little bit, then it could alter the entire race, and it could change a lot of, the future for American politics. Again, this one electoral vote could end up deciding the race. But to say it in the short version, I don't have it flipping on the presidential level. I do have Harris fairly easily maintaining her win, maintaining Biden's win from 2020. I do have her winning this. I do have her winning the presidency, whether it be by a narrow margin or a bit of a larger margin. I do have her winning. And on the Senate level, I do have Deb Fischer holding on and winning her seat by probably 8 to 10 points as of now. So less than she should, but still a win. So I hope you did enjoy this video. Comment down below where you think the Nebraska Senate race will go. Once again, please stay safe in the storm if you are affected by it, and I'll see you guys next time.